Welcome to Stop Funding Israel News with your host, Steve Johnson.
In the news this evening, ISIS in Mexico, the story has been found to be a fabrication. The Israeli military computer systems hacked again, the third time this year. Scientists say there's an asteroid on a collision course with Earth to hit in October 2017. Wikileaks has exposed the State Department using Hollywood celebrities, pressured into making anti-Russian propaganda. The revelations come after Wikileaks has exposed SONY Corporation being a part of that propaganda. All these stories and more on Stop Funding Israel News. It seems that NATO are edging closer to the Russian border, sparking fears of a conflict. All these stories and many more on Stop Funding Israel News. And now your host, Steve Johnson. Hey, welcome back to Stop Funding Israel News. I'm your host for today. We got a lot of stories to get through, so let's get through it. First of all, we've got the story about Wikileaks exposing that Sony pictures, along with a whole heap of celebrities, have been pressured by the Pentagon into putting out anti-Russian statements and propaganda. For more on this breaking news story, we're crossing live to our news reporter in the field from Western Australia, Mr. JB. Are you there, Mr. JB?
Thank you, Steve. The latest documents released by Wikileaks reveal some uncomfortable yet unsurprising truths about the relationship between Hollywood and the US government. In its propaganda efforts against Russia, the US State Department may have pressured Sony and some of the biggest stars into cooperating. The latest Wikileaks release includes thousands of documents which reveal ties between the Whitehouse and Sony Pictures. It's taking journalists a long time to comb through the weeds, but some troubling details are emerging. As Wikileaks notes, Sony Pictures Entertainment CEO Michael Linton is also on the board of trustees for the RAND Corporation, a research arm of the US military. According to emails, the State Department may have taken advantage of Linton's dual position to further its own propaganda aims. While comparing a sovereign nation to a terrorist group may be nothing new for the US officials, such blatant evidence of Washington's propaganda war is newsworthy. In response, Linton provided a list full of other Hollywood executives who would presumably also be cooperative. This included senior level management from Turner Broadcasting and Walt Disney International. Other emails suggest that Linton was also asked to pressure Hollywood celebrities into promoting foreign policy objectives of the Obama administration. Celebrities suggested by Linton include George Clooney, Kerry Washington, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, as well as major filmmakers like David Fincher and Steven Spielberg. Would also include Natalie Portman, as she has just done a movie in Israel and is very involved there, one email read. But Sony's ties with the government extend even beyond the State Department emails. Documents reveal that Linton also had contact with the President, having dinner with the Obamas. Wikileaks also revealed in an email from Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer, which detailed his concerns with a perceived Russian threat. Of course, the knowledge of close coordination between Hollywood and the US government is nothing new, as David Sirota points out in his book Back to Our Future. A conflict of interest has existed for years. The Pentagon, and it's very open about this, the Pentagon will line edit screenwriter scripts that are about the military if those screenwriters and the studios want to have access to be able to photograph planes or tanks or aircraft carriers, Sirota said during an interview with RT. Given the example of 1986's Top Gun, Sirota notes that the filmmakers of that movie submitted their script to the Pentagon editors for the Pentagon to line edit to make sure it was perfectly mimicking what the Pentagon wanted to say. Another great documentary is called Operation Hollywood. War correspondent Keith Harmon Snow echoed these sentiments in relation to the film Act of Valor. We have it as a psychological operation against the American public, Snow told RT. That means this is not Hollywood, it's total propaganda by and for the Pentagon using Hollywood as the face. Still, during a State Department briefing on Friday, spokesman Marie Harf noted that SONY Pictures is only the tip of the iceberg. This is JB reporting live for Stop Funding Israel News. Back to you in the studio, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much there, JB in the field. Our next story is about glyphosate. Now, following the World Health Organization's report declaring that glyphosate, the active ingredient in Monsanto's Roundup, likely causes cancer, the Environmental Protection Agency announced on Friday that the regulators may begin testing food for residue of the pesticide chemical. Given increased public interest in glyphosate, the EPA may recommend sampling for glyphosate in the future, the EPA said in an email to a press agency. While Monsanto maintains that the herbicide is safe in trace amounts, the public has grown increasingly wary of the chemical, especially after the World Health Organization reclassified glyphosate from possibly carcinogenic to probably carcinogenic to humans just last month, in the month of March 2015. After the reclassification, Monsanto fired off an extremely contentious press release stating that they have asked to meet with the WHO to challenge their findings, as half of the agro-giant's revenue reportedly comes from Roundup and Roundup-ready seeds. We have issued an urgent request for an appropriate personnel of the WHO to sit down with the Global Glyphosate Task Force and other regulatory agencies to account for the scientific studies used in their analysis, and equally as important, to account for those scientific studies that were disregarded, Monsanto wrote in an email. The U.S. government does not currently test for glyphosate in foods, as it has previously been considered safe. The ultimate decision on whether or not testing will begin is in the hands of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and their pesticide data program. The only year that the USDA opted to test for glyphosate was 2011. And out of 300 soybeans tested, 271 of those sample tested positive for the herbicide. Aside from the likelihood of glyphosate being carcinogenic, many studies have also shown alarming instances of fetal deaths and birth defects in animals, including missing kidneys, missing lungs, enlarged hearts, and abnormally formed bones and skulls that has been linked to the chemical. The pressure to begin the testing is not likely to relent, as people are becoming more and more aware and more concerned about where their food is coming from and preferring their dinners not to have been grown with these chemical poisons. In Baltic news, the Russian General Staff have made an announcement that in 2014, the intensity of NATO's operational and combat training activities has grown by 80%, said Lieutenant General Andrei Kartapalov, the head of Main Operation Directorate of General Staff. The leadership of NATO have made no effort to hide the clear anti-Russian orientation of these activities. He said that during this period, NATO created a grouping of its member states' forces in the Baltic states consisting of over 10,000 troops and about 1,500 armored vehicles, 80 planes and helicopters, and 50 warships, Kartapalov said during the 4th Moscow Conference on International Security just recently. According to the Lieutenant General, strategic bombers from the U.S. Air Force have been used to perform strategic tasks during these exercises. He also said that the U.S. plans to supply its Eastern European allies with JSSMER long-range aviation cruise missiles, which will enable NATO warplanes to hit targets 1,300 kilometers inside the Russian territory. He also said in the case of a military conflict, critical facilities on the territory of almost the entire European part of Russia will be vulnerable to NATO's air attack, with the flight time of these missiles reduced by half, he warned. The General Staff official also spoke about increased intelligence activity by NATO in the Black Sea. He said that U.S. Global Hawk drones were spotted in Ukrainian airspace in March, with the UAVs increasing the depth of reconnaissance on the territory of Russia by 200 to 300 kilometers. According to the minister, the Ukraine conflict, in which over 6,000 people have already been killed, is simply part of a larger Western plan to undermine Russia. Washington and its allies are trying to alienate the Russian neighbors through a combination of misrepresenting Moscow's stance as aggressive and offering investments in lucrative military programs to the neighboring governments, he said. It seems things are heating up all over the place, and once more, things are heating up for Israel, as we cross now live in the field to Mr. JB himself with another news update about the Israeli hacking that just recently took place. Mr. JB, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Hackers managed to breach the computer networks of the Israeli military, sending out emails to numerous military addresses that claimed to show breaking military news. Hackers managed to breach the computer networks of the Israeli military in an espionage operation. This comes less than a month after Anonymous has hacked and disabled over 5,000 Israeli websites, including government and sensitive websites linked to the Israel security. Now, the third time this year, Israeli websites have been targeted and successfully sabotaged. The infiltration was most likely done by Arab-speaking programmers. Waylon Grange, a researcher with the security firm Blue Coat Systems Incorporated, who discovered the spy operation, said the vast majority of the software was put together from widely available tools, such as the remote access Trojan called Poison Ivy. The hackers sent emails to numerous military addresses that claimed to show breaking military news, or in some cases, an excerpt featuring girls of the Israel Defense Forces. Some of the emails included attachments that established backdoors for later access by the hackers and modules that could download and run additional programs, according to Blue Coat. Grange said he did not know if any vital data had been stolen. Blue Coat deduced that the attackers spoke Arabic because some of the data recovered in the investigation showed that was the default language setting in one of the programming tools. In February, Kaspersky Lab researchers said they found what they considered the first advanced Arabic-speaking hacking group, which they labelled Desert Falcons. Kaspersky said the group operated from Palestine, Egypt and Turkey and claimed about 3,000 victims in 50 countries, targeting military, government, media and activist computers. This is JB reporting live for Stop Funding Israel. Back to you in the studio, Steve.
Hey, thanks very much there, Mr. JB, out there in the field in Western Australia. You know, folks, there's a lot of good money to be made in making up fake news, and that's what this story is about. Earlier this week, on April the 14th, a nameless news story appeared on the Corruption Chronicles blog section of the website Judicial Watch, which claimed that an ISIS camp was a few miles from Texas, which Mexican authorities confirmed. The website claimed that an ISIS base exists approximately 8 miles from the U.S.-Texas border in an area known as the Anapra, just west of Ciudad Juarez, in the Mexican state of Chihuahua. Upon closer inspection, though, it's very clear that this story is fake. The following day, even Fox News distanced itself, and Fox News makes up a lot of bullshit. But they distanced themselves from the story, reporting that U.S. law enforcement agencies flatly denied there was any truth at all to the allegations that ISIS militants had set up a training base in Mexico. El Paso-based local news affiliate ABC7 also contacted multiple federal border agencies. They all said the same thing. The report is unverified, and there is no ISIS in Anapra or Juarez. Today, the U.S. State Department also weighed in, calling the claims unfounded. This did not stop a number of crazy, nut-job, fear-mongering, and opportunistic media outlets from running with the latest fake ISIS story, trying to generate some income with it, with some U.S.-based outlets even producing their own fake ISIS beheading videos designed to hype up the fear surrounding the fake news story. As if we needed any more fake ISIS videos made to scare the U.S. population into submission. We just don't need it. It was all based on over-the-top sensationalism, and at the lack of any substance in the story, most intelligent Americans might write it off as another fake ISIS in Mexico story. But for cash-obsessed media businesses, a wild story like this, whether it's true or not, will automatically generate tens of thousands of dollars in online ad revenues overnight. Beyond the obvious financial gains, the real function of a planted story like this is very political. By invoking the ISIS threat, it energizes the far-right wing in America, which further polarizes the political spectrum. It emboldens the PNAC planners, the Project for the New American Century. It emboldens those in the CFR, the Council for Foreign Relations. And here we can see how a planted news story is custom designed to advance a fear-based agenda, where media outlets work hand in glove with the U.S. government's military establishment to secure more funding and foreign intervention in the Middle East. as well as more funding for Department of Homeland Security in the United States. The ad generates revenues from this story alone across all media have already generated millions of dollars in the average. The other problem with fake ISIS stories is that these could be used as PR padding required for a future false flag attack on U.S. soil. They could say they saw it coming. After years of being inundated with ISIS fear propaganda and garbage beyond all measure, most people will just relent and automatically register any false flag as the work of ISIS. Again, this is where the media are playing straight into the CIA and Operation Mockingbird type synthetic narratives. Ironically, certain websites that once dedicated their resources to educating Americans about fake media stories are now in the business of creating them. Don't fall into that bullshit trap. The same goes with government false flag attacks, only now it seems that, knowingly or not, these alternative media businesses are playing a role, at least on some level, in facilitating the necessary public opinion swing. In this case, it's fear of Muslims or a fear of ISIS that is required for the government to sell a future ISIS attack in America. To an increasingly unwitting American population, they're keeping America scared. This week's bogus taco jihad is just the latest in a new popular genre of propaganda being advanced by partisan charlatans and their corrupted media outlets. If you think this will be the last ISIS in Mexico story, you'd be wrong. The same media operative who planted this story will continue to recycle it over and over and over. And as if we don't get enough mainstream media fear-mongering bullshit in the news headlines, here's another piece I saw just recently. Asteroid 2012 TC4, which narrowly avoided colliding with Earth in October 2012, is set to swing past Earth for a second time. Researchers have speculated that this time, the body could be as large as 40 meters wide, almost as big as the famed Statue of Liberty, and about twice the size of that meteor that exploded over Chelyabinsk in February of 2013. Experts concede they have no way of knowing where the asteroid may strike. The giant space rock was discovered by a Hawaiian observatory, and in 2012 missed Earth by only a short 59,000 miles. It is now expected to come close to our planet again in October 2017. Fortunately, not many astronomers believe that the asteroid will actually hit us, and if it does, they believe it might actually land in a remote area. There is a 1 in a million chance, said Texas astronomer Dr. Judith Goyes Rice. Experts at NASA's Asteroid Watch believe there's absolutely no chance that the asteroid could hit Earth, but Dr. Georgi Rice insists more observations will be necessary before confirming or denying that the meteor poses any threat whatsoever. That's about all we got time for Stop Funding Israel News. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for more updates as we come to you live and direct with all the latest happenings around the world. Hope you enjoy this video just as much as I do. Take care, God bless, and ciao for now.